my name is Ashley Mather, and I have been looking at the events that have happened so far in 100 Years of Solitude. So we start with a flashback on the very first page, and it's Colonel Aureliano Buendia facing a firing squad. But as he's facing this firing squad, he remembers the first time he saw ice. And we'll get to there. So our main characters are Jose Arcadio Buendia, who I will be calling Jose for the rest of this. We have Ursula, his wife. We have Jose Arcadio and Aureliano. So Jose Arcadio and Ursula are both from a small town called Riohacha, and they're cousins. They got married, and she didn't want to consummate the marriage because she was afraid that of the side effects of a baby being inbred. So word got out that she was still a virgin a few months after the wedding, and there was a rumor going around that Jose was impotent. Somebody told him this rumor, and Jose went home, grabbed a spear, went back, and killed him. This man's name was Prudencio Aguilar. And then a few days after the killing, they both began to see Prudencio's ghost. So they decided to pack up and move. So they wanted to settle by the sea. They couldn't find the sea, so they settled by a small river. And Jose had a dream where the town was named Macondo, and that's how it got its name. Also, on this journey, Ursula had their first son, Jose Arcadio. Now, we don't necessarily know when this story takes place. There's a flashback that actually happened in real life. It's when Sir Francis Duke invaded Riohacha. That happened in the late 15th century. And then the rest of the story kind of takes place between 1850 to 1950, right around there, give or take. And this takes place during the time where Colombia got its independence. So, right around 1866. And we see kind of from the get-go that Jose has kind of an obsessive personality. So we have a gypsy friend named Melquiades, and he brings in things from the outside world because not only are they geographically isolated, they're kind of behind the times. So Melquiades brings around magnifying glasses, telescopes, and even false teeth, and Jose is just flabbergasted by these. He's just trying to figure out how they work. So, that being said, the very first time Jose and his son saw ice was when the gypsies came through again after they found out Melquiades had died. They had to pay to touch the ice. And Jose was like, "This is the coolest thing that I have ever seen." And that's where we see the flashback. So Melquiades had given Jose an alchemy lab, and him and his sons would work in it pretty often. And the older one, Jose Arcadio, didn't really show an interest in working in the lab. He had just hit puberty, so there were other things that he'd rather be doing, and that's where we met Pilar. Now, Pilar is an older woman. She's basically a housekeeper for the Buendias. She ended up seducing Jose Arcadia, and he ended up impregnating her. Now, after he found that out, the gypsies passed through again, and he found a beautiful gypsy in a tent and decided to leave with them. Now, Ursula, she was like, I need to go look for my son. So she tried to follow him, and although she didn't find him, she did find a road out of Macondo, and she brought back other people. That means that we're expanding. It's great. And then, out of nowhere, a little girl, about 11 years old, named Rebecca comes around. Now, she's obviously very traumatized. She's still sucking her thumb at the age of 11, and she's eating sand and the whitewash off of the walls. Ursula eventually corrects this behavior, and everything's good. But Rebecca does suffer from insomnia, and nobody in Macondo has ever heard of it, so they just don't believe it exists until everybody gets it, and then they start losing the memories. So Jose Arcadio decides to make a memory machine to try to help him remember. Now we see a strange but familiar visitor, and it turns out to be Melquiades. Apparently he came back because being dead was lonely. And then we meet Remedios Mascote and Pietro Crespi. So Remedios is the town magistrate's daughter, and Aureliano, who's about 20 years old now, becomes infatuated with her, and it's kind of weird because she's only 9 years old. Anyway, Pietro, he catches the eyes of Rebecca and Amaranta, which is Jose's and Ursula's youngest daughter. And he ends up picking Rebecca because she's older and she's more beautiful. And then Jose becomes obsessed with the mechanical toys that Pietro keeps bringing around. And he goes so crazy that they end up locking him to a tree because he's just destroying everything. He's in like a Groundhog Day kind of thing. If you've ever seen that movie, like he doesn't know one day from another. It's bad. And then one day, Aureliano and his friends went out and drank. He passed out, and when he came to, he was at Pilar's house. And he ended up impregnating her as well. And then he started crying. He was like, I just love Remedios so much. Like, what do I do? And Pilar was like, I'll see what I can do for you. And they end up getting married when she's about 9 or 10 years old, after she hits puberty. And she ends up dying in the middle of the night because of a uterine hemorrhage due to the early stages of pregnancy, which is really sad because not only because she's so young, but because she brought peace to this crazy household. And then we find out that Melquiades died for real this time. He's the first person to be buried in Macondo. And then the priest that did the wedding wanted to build a cathedral because he was disappointed in the lack of religion in Macondo. So he starts begging for money, and that doesn't work. So he starts levitating, and that kind of works. But then Rebecca and Pietro want to speed up their wedding process because Aramanta really doesn't like that. And he ends up giving Father Nicanor enough money to build the cathedral. And then, after finding out that his father-in-law was doing some corrupt things, Aureliano decided to protect him and named himself Colonel Aureliano Buendia, which is where we see the very first scene. And then he made Arcadio the son of Jose Arcadio and Pilar in charge of Macondo. And like, he was a dictator. He sent the school children out as an enforcement squad. So Ursula chased him out with a whip. And then she became the leader of Macondo. And during all of this, Jose Arcadio did come back and he married Rebecca, who is his adoptive sister. And they are forbidden from stepping foot in the Buendia house ever again. And then one day after work, Jose Arcadio came home, closed the bedroom, and there was a gunshot. And Rebecca said she never heard anything, but I feel like you would hear a gunshot. Anyway, after a while, Pietro goes and proposes to Amaranta. And she says, no, I wouldn't marry you even if I were dead. So he goes and commits suicide, which is crazy. But anyway. And then Colonel Aureliano gets imprisoned. And he wants... his final wish is to die in Macondo. But when they get there, the soldiers are too scared. And then at the last moment, Jose Arcadio, the son, like, pops out with a shotgun and stops them. And then Aureliano got a premonition that his dad was going to die soon. So they unchained him. He started having conversations with the guy that he killed. And then he died, which, I mean, I cried, but anyway. And then at the end of chapter 8, the Macondo mayor is dead by firing squad because... why is he dead? Because he's on the opposing side.